Welcome into episode 74 of the Two Pad Stack podcast. That's right, we're back. I know it's been a little while, going on like a month at this point now. Holy smokes. I'm your host, Ace, back in the seat alongside me, my wonderful co host, Jake Reiser. Jake, how's it going, buddy?
We're alive.
We are indeed alive. Yeah, and hopefully you all haven't forgotten about us and found a new Boston Bruins podcast to tune into. But we're back. Hasn't been a lot necessarily to talk about. I mean, we got plenty to talk about in this episode, but it's been a little bit of a quieter time here for the Bruins and for us here on the show. But hey, we're back in the saddle. We've got a lot to talk about with you guys on today, and I'm happy to be back here. So, Jake, what have you been up to this last month or so?
Oh, life's been kicking me. I got a birthday to celebrate, getting ready for a new puppy in the household. So,
Wow. Nice.
yeah, like I said, lots of good things coming. And obviously, I'm wearing pink because we're recording this on Memorial Day. And so it's the unofficial
Right.
start of summer. So, time to go
That's
catch some
true.
rays.
That's true. Yeah, we spent probably about 6 hours outside today. We did like a long outdoor walk. There's a place up in New Hampshire, a town called Dover is where I grew up, and they have the Dover Community Trail where you park and you do like a 3.5 mile walk. It brings you all the way from like in the woods and the suburban areas right to downtown. So we did that walk as a family, and then we got to downtown. We went to Lexi's Joint, which is a nice burger place in downtown Dover.
Nice.
Had a beautiful burger there, and we walked all the way back. So we were out there, did a 7 mile walk today. Spent like 4 hours outside. It was a wonderful day. So good way to
Absolutely
kind of
gorgeous.
kick
It's a
off.
little chilly for late May, but that sounds wonderful regardless, man.
Yeah, it was a great time for sure. Um, so yeah, it was great. Honestly, I'm ready for the warmer weather. It's been a really rainy May so far. Like I thought it was April showers, not May torrential downpours, but it's not been bad. It's not been bad at all. So Bruins news. Draft lottery happened. So I mean, I know I have already been on record saying, hey, what better market to rig a draft lottery for than the Boston Bruins? I mean, you have a team that's always doing really well. I mean, you're looking at the ratings for television for the NHL playoffs this year. Not good. Not good. Tell you what would be good for TV ratings. The Boston Bruins back in the postseason. That would be good for TV ratings. So why not rig the draft for the Boston Bruins? And I'm not necessarily really implying that it happens, but man, it looks pretty sus when you look over at the NBA and what they were dealing with, and Dallas suddenly gets gifted a first overall pick right after that deal that they made with the Lakers. Like, I don't know. I know we're not a
Apparently, all the
basketball podcast.
representatives in town were like quietly chortling to themselves because they were just like, I cannot believe this is happening.
Just mind-boggling. And I mean, it happened with the Rangers. They moved all the way up to get Alexei Lafreniere, and obviously Chicago is bad enough, but they secured Connor Bedard. Like the original six teams sometimes get the edge, and so maybe I wasn't completely out of my complete senses there when I was hoping maybe there was a chance that the Boston Bruins could win the first overall pick. And what happens? The New York Islanders come out of nowhere and somehow secure the first overall pick, which jockeys the Bruins back one slot. So that's all right. I saw myself, okay, that's fine. There's still a chance that the Bruins could be selected for the second overall pick in that secondary pick that they make. And I don't know if you saw that post by Marcuzzi on Instagram or Twitter, and he grabbed the still from immediately before they were pushing the button to grab the ball.
Mhm.
And the one ball that the Bruins needed to go up into the chute to get second overall was there just a hair of a second before the Utah ball showed up.
Oh.
So the Bruins are that close, like literally a millisecond. If he probably had a better reaction time, the Bruins would have had second overall pick. But it didn't work out that way. And then the Bruins slid back 2 spots. So basically a worst case scenario draft lottery for the Boston Bruins to drop back 2 spots. I don't know what you've heard, Jake. I mean, outside of our chat with Shane Malloy, but it seems like this draft's very top heavy and it falls off after that sixth pick pretty significantly. And guess what? The Bruins are outside of that sixth pick now. Woo!
Yeah, but if there's one thing we know about NHL GMs, they can be stupid and do stupid things. Looking at you, Chicago, not drafting Ivan Demidov and immediately regretting it and somehow trying to throw Montreal the moon to get Demidov. But hoping for that to happen, but it's not the best thing for the Bruins right now. Look, we're not saying they're bad players at 7. There's really good players at 7. Depends on how a lot of things fall out. It's just definitely not optimal.
Yeah, and maybe we get another like Beckett Seneke situation where Anaheim kind of goes off the board at pick 3 to pick Beckett Seneke. So maybe that happens, and then a player falls to the Boston Bruins at 7 that we were hoping for at 5. So who knows? So now that we know that the Bruins are going to be picking at 7, Jake, any names in particular you're hoping for? I know just like Shane was originally projecting the Bruins to be at 7, 8, 9 when we talked to him on that episode. And he even then was saying, oh, Caleb Desnoyers, that's the guy. He's the Boston Bruins, like carbon copy of what they're looking for in the draft. Center, defensively responsible, playing with Loke Johansson there and Moncton, all of those types of things. So any other names that are jumping out at you that maybe you're hoping for, or maybe any names that are jumping and kind of picking up a lot of steam from scouts that you're maybe having your eyes out for?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Porter Martone, to me, built like the right-handed Milan Lucic in his prime. He gets a lot of Brady Tkachuk comparisons as well. Big bodied, big kid, good enough hands to score. If they're really looking to hammer home, we are still the big bad Bruins. I think that's a pretty good pick for them. Otherwise, I love a guy like Roger McQueen. He's already got the NHL build. He's 6'5", 175, so he just needs to put on a little bit of muscle weight. Great hands, phenomenal scorer. He was injured earlier in the season, but I think he'd be a steal at 7. And then Jake O'Brien, I think, would also be a really great pick. He was the 2023-2024 OHL Rookie of the Year. Gives me very David Krejci vibes. Responsible with the puck, a great two-way center, a great playmaker, very creative. Those would be 3 guys that I would really look at: Martone, McQueen, and O'Brien.
Yeah, those are good ones. The other ones that I'm going to kind of just point out there is we already mentioned Caleb Desnoyers. I do think he goes earlier. It wouldn't surprise me to see Desnoyers go to Philadelphia immediately before the Boston Bruins pick because they are looking for a center. He's been compared a lot of the times to the Flyers centerman.
Couturier?
Correct. Yeah, Sean Couturier. And then I guess Desnoyers' brother is already in the Flyers system too. So there's a lot of connections there. So I still have my eyes on Desnoyers to see if he maybe falls. Anton Frandel, I think, is another name that I'm hoping that maybe falls if somebody goes off the board. And then the other name that's kind of picking up a lot of steam and a lot of mock drafts is Brady Martin as well. So Martin is a little bit more of a reliable two-way center, a little less maybe offensive upside. I think ceiling's more of like a David Krejci, floors like a Danton Heinen, that type of guy. Obviously, you don't want a Danton Heinen at the 7th overall pick, but there's a potential there. So if you can get another David Krejci out of the 7th overall, there's nothing wrong with that for sure. So we will know more. We have about a month until the draft, almost to the day for the first round. The draft is on June 27th. 2025. So we'll have hopefully a couple more episodes leading up to the draft. And then very shortly after that, we will have free agent frenzy, and the Bruins have some cap to play with. So that'll be fascinating to monitor. Any closing thoughts on the Bruins picking at 7, Jake, before we pivot to the coaching search?
Again, it's so dependent on what happens before then. I think who they pick is going to be really endemic of the identity of whoever the new head coach is. Because they're the one, if this head coach signs a 3 or 4-year deal, ostensibly this first round pick is developing under this hire. And so whoever they pick, I think, is going to be very endemic of whatever style this new head coach is going to want to play.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that definitely playing a role. But speaking of, there was a report out, and I give this, I'm going to take this with a really, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt, 100%, because there are reports that Rick Tocchet was in the mix for the Boston Bruins head coach job, but because of the uncertainty of the front office in Boston and other things without, necessarily concrete foundational stuff going on here with the team right now. It's a little bit of a state of flux, if you will, that he wasn't interested in the Boston Bruins coaching job. And in short, shortly after that, it came out that the Bruins had extended Don Sweeney to a 2-year contract extension. So no longer is his contract expiring at the conclusion of the 2025-2026 season. He is now signed through the 2027-2028 season. So I'm curious your thoughts. Do you think that this was a extension that was given to the general manager of the Boston Bruins in order to facilitate some more productive coaching conversations, or do you think that there was more to it than that?
I think it was done definitely in advance of in-person interviews. I think, interviews are a two-way street. You're interviewing about not only why you'd be a good fit
Yeah.
for the organization, but why the organization would be a good fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely was done in anticipation of that, but also it just sounded like a formality. After the end of season media conference with Sweeney, Neely, and Jacobs giving both of them the backing, it seemed like a matter of time before it was done. So again, I might take that with a grain of salt that Sweeney not having a contract dissuaded Rick Tocchet. I'm not mad they didn't hire Rick Tocchet. He's a good enough coach. He seems to get that good coaching burst and then fall off. And I wasn't going to throw the moon for money for him. If he wanted to come on his own accord, that's great. Philly threw a ton of cash at him. Fine by me.
Yeah, and also that particular source that it came out from, he's been a fraud for like 20 years, so I'm not particularly concerned about that. My big thing is on the extension is that put yourself in Don Sweeney's shoes, and you basically know it was made public knowledge that you were on the hot seat, right? You said that they are going to return back to the postseason next season. You said that. You said that. Cam Neely said that. Ownership said that that's the expectation. So now you know that you're on the hot seat. You know you have to get into the postseason, otherwise you're gone. No, I'd be willing to bet money that if Don Sweeney got canned, he'd have another GM opportunity a week later, just like everybody else that comes out of this organization. They get replaced very quickly. But I still think that that's definitely the case. Even with an extension in place, if they miss the postseason, there's no cap recapture if you fire a GM. There's no concerns about that. You can fire them whenever, right? But my thought is, do you want a GM knowing that he doesn't have a contract in place in a position where he's making moves out of desperation? That's how you get a David Backes contract. That's how you go out and acquire a player that's going to be a net negative on your locker room out of desperation. So you give him that. Correct. Yeah, exactly. So you give him that 2-year extension, you give him that sense of security, and maybe he's a little bit more critical, a little bit more future facing. And Don Sweeney's a smart guy. Despite what everyone says on social media and, lambastes the guy and saying the Bruins need a new front office, we've talked about it before. There's a reason why he was named the GM of Team Canada, and he's really well received. There's a reason why he's the only one when we go and watch these press conferences from the ownership and management team, that he's the only guy that can formulate a coherent thought. He's a smart guy. He really is. And if you have him in a situation where he can think more about future state than just now, that bodes well for the organization. Whether they even keep him beyond this year or not, I'd rather him think critically future state for the health of the team long term.
I think it sounds so funny to give Sweeney his flowers because of how much you criticized him, but we've got to remember, I don't think the Bruins get to the 2019 Stanley Cup final without the two awesome trades he swung for Marcus Johansson and Charlie Coyle at the trade deadline there. He's clearly shrewd enough to do good things when he can have the time to think about it. He wouldn't have been the head coach of the Bruins, or the general manager of the Bruins this long without having some success and having the trust of the people around him. Because this town is known for chewing people up and spitting them out real quick. And so the fact that he's lasted this long is a testament that he is a smart dude and he knows what to do in some regard. So, give him that 2-year extension, give him some peace of mind. And you know what? It absolutely helps the head coaches. So, okay, if he's here at least 3 years, that's someone I can start building a partnership with and, build the next iteration of this team, the team that's in my vision with.
Yeah, exactly. So, we already mentioned that it probably ties in with a coaching search. It's been kind of interesting to watch this whole process play out. I mean, this is Don Sweeney's second full coaching search, right?
Hmm.
Because I mean, when he promoted, I mean, he was the one that I believe he let Claude go. Um,
Yes, he did let Claude go and promoted Bruce.
Correct. So that was not a full coaching search because Bruce Cassidy was the bench boss of the Providence Bruins at that time. So it was an internal promotion, and obviously that was received really well, and he did a good job. But the first full-fledged coaching search led to the Boston Bruins hiring Jim Montgomery, and we all know how that went. So I'm curious, do you think that maybe some of his names that were on that former process maybe got an initial call? I've heard some speculation that David Quinn is involved in the deal out west with Seattle. Um, I know Bruins basically they tested out the waters by saying, oh, they let some leaks out that David Quinn was the front runner, and then all of that kind of came out that people were very against that, and then suddenly he wasn't the front runner; it was Jim Montgomery. So I'm wondering, like, is there any other names that you think were involved in the previous coaching search that maybe were on the quick, frequent dial card for Don Sweeney?
Surprisingly, I don't think so. I think that Don learned his lesson after search number one and, not playing games and trying to, game the system, game the market, game the fans, game the media. And I think he's smart enough to know that, we need to have trust in the process from the get go and not, leak a name and be like, oh my God, the sky is going to fall, the roof is going to burn down if this hire happens, and then have to pivot from there. The names that have come out, who are ostensibly interviewing in person next week, and the names that I've heard who he has talked to,
Mm.
none of them have screamed, I would be offended if they were hired, which is an upgrade from the process from last time.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, Jake. I think I would be offended if they hired Joe Sacco. I think I would be offended if they hired Jay Leach. These guys have already been in there. They've been involved on the bench for the Boston Bruins, and I did not see a lot of coaching acumen from this team this year. Obviously they had the initial, jump of energy after Jim Montgomery was fired. You had everybody saying, I believe in Joe Sacco. I mean, I was yelling that from, the rafters in 308 or whatever. But the wheels fell off very, very quickly. I mean, there was a point in time where Cam Neely was in the media and he was saying, hey, I see two paths in front of us because we're a 500 club. We go on a run here, I'm going to add. But if we keep, if we do the opposite of going on a run, we're going to have to sell. And we all know what happened to the Boston Bruins at the trade deadline. We all know that they had to sell. And the work that Don Sweeney and the front office did has been actually pretty universally lauded and applauded, really well regarded with the returns that he was able to get for the players that he dealt out. But I do not want an internal candidate for the head coach. I want them to go outside. And I think my pick for the best one that is allegedly probably the clubhouse leader, according to Elliot Friedman as of this morning, was a name that you put out there quite a few months back.
The guy I've been preaching for a majority of the season, Marco Sturm.
Just, I mean, like the first thing that comes up to people's, their initial reaction when you mention the name Marco Sturm is that, oh boy, here we go, another former Bruin. Another old boys club. We've already got Don Sweeney and Cam Neely, former Bruins, and they're going to bring in another former Bruin. I don't necessarily think, yes, he is a former Bruin. And yes, he's got some of the most iconic goals from my childhood too. Like that game 6 goal against Montreal. That this building is vibrating. One of the most beautiful Jack Edwards calls of all times. He's got the game-winning goal in the original Winter Classic at Fenway Park.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, he's a memorable Bruin. The centerpiece in the Joe Thornton trade back from San Jose. Like, yeah, but he hasn't been part of this program for a decade or so. He hasn't been a part of Boston's system. He's been over in the LA system. He was the head coach of the Ontario Reign, their AHL affiliate, and he put a heck of a team together over there. He's got a really really good record. So I don't think this is necessarily like another old boys club hire if they end up going down that road.
if you look at the LA Kings roster and some of the rookies that are on there, and the ones he's been able to mold, Quentin Byfield, Sam Hellenius, Brant Clark, Jordan Spence. These are guys who he's been Alex Turcotte, Akil Thomas, guys who he's been able to develop in Ontario into not just good, but everyday quality. Byfield into a stupendous NHL quality player and system. And so if we can flood our system, with the influx of draft picks we have, if we can flood our system with good guys, if we can take advantage of the young guys we have, maybe he does even better things with Husnudinov. Fraser Minton comes up and plays well. I think he's a really, really, really interesting hire. You're right. The exposure that he's had in the LA organization. He was on the John Stevens bench as an assistant coach in LA before he was the head coach in Ontario. So not only does he have head coaching experience, he has NHL experience on the bench, not just as a player. So that's why I've said all around, I think he'd be fantastic. He's also been the head coach and general manager of Team Germany through a number of international tournaments. So he's got experience all the way around that's completely unrelated to the Bruins. I think he understands what it means to be a Bruin, and I think that's what's important and what might have him stand out from the rest, that he knows what it means, but it doesn't completely envelop his identity. He will be Marco Sturm. It'll be Marco Sturm's team, but he knows how important this team is to the city, and that might be the X factor. Even though some of the other guys who have been mentioned, a Mitch Love, who's been doing fantastic and is a hot name in Washington as an assistant coach.
Yeah.
Jay Woodcroft, who everybody's been confused why he hasn't been hired yet. There are other guys who have been very good coaches. I think Sturm might just have that edge.
Yeah, my big thing that's kind of interesting with Woodcroft is that I think he was probably let go unfairly by the Edmonton front office.
Oh, without a question.
Yeah, I mean, he had a really, really good record, and then he got bounced, I think, in the second round when his goaltenders couldn't stop a beach ball, and his defense was a bunch of pylons. Because believe it or not, if you give your opponent 7 cracks at you, they can put a game plan around stopping your all-star forwards. And if you can't punch back defensively or have a goalie that steals a game or two in the playoffs, you're going to find yourself in a pickle. And I think that Brett definitely was, the sacrificial lamb in that situation. And it's kind of surprising that he hasn't gotten another opportunity. So
I mean, let's also not forget McJesus probably was whispering in Ken Holland's ear at the time, hey, I've got a buddy who I know would make a really good coach. He'd certainly motivate me if he were hired.
Yeah, I mean, when you're basically the face of the franchise, face of the NHL, you can pull those strings and definitely do that. And if I'm the owner of the Edmonton Oilers, I tell my GM, do whatever you can to make this kid happy because he is selling me so much merch.
I mean, granted, Knobloch's done a great job at Edmonton. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not saying that it would have been better to keep Jay Woodcroft, but
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I would of the names here. So I'm just going to rattle through them one more time here. In-person interviews this week for these guys, allegedly. These are just what's being reported. But Mitch Love, like Jake mentioned, assistant coach for the Washington Capitals on Spencer Carberry's staff, who's I think he just got nominated for Coach of the Year. I think that's if he hasn't,
he possibly could win it.
I think he probably will, other than the playoff performance. But Marco Sturm, we've already talked about him. Jay Woodcroft, we mentioned him. Jay Leach, he's already here. Of course, he's going to get an in-person. Joe Sacco, already here. I did hear Jay Leach was pretty hot on the Seattle job as well.
Yeah.
He was previously an assistant coach over with the Kraken in their inaugural season, I believe. So it wouldn't surprise me if he gets a look over there. On Mitch Love, Elliot Friedman also did report that he may be the front runner for the Penguins job, which is interesting. So that's kind of cool. The one that kind of came out of nowhere for me was Luke Richardson. That one kind of caught me by surprise. And I'll confess, I don't know a lot about his expertise outside of his stint with the Chicago Blackhawks with a very rough team. That he was basically the commander of the team that secured them Connor Bedard that season. He was the coach that led them to that first overall pick. So I don't really know a lot about his background other than that. So, but the work that they did in Chicago didn't really leave me really impressed. But granted, it's a tanking team, so how can you really analyze it?
I mean, Richardson's a former player. I know he was with the Canadian system. He was an assistant actually to Claude before, and with Dominic Ducharme before ending up at the Chicago job. They're not facing any competition as well from what we're hearing on him. It's pretty much Richardson is only interviewing with the Bruins, and that's it. So maybe Richardson is their like Quinn-esque fallback plan from the last hiring round. But
Yeah,
if it were me, Sturm and Love tick, and probably Woodcroft tick the
those are my
needle
top
way
three,
more for me than the others.
100%. Yep, agreed. So we will find out more next week. Hopefully, by the time we record, maybe next time we'll have a more concrete bit of news. If we do record next week, probably we're gonna try to stick to the biweekly schedule, but life finds a way, if you will. So moving on. Before we move on, Jake, are you good? You got anything else on coaching?
I would love just someone who's got a head for numbers,
Mm,
which I can see Love and Sturm and Woodcroft bringing more than the others.
mm.
It would signal we hear you, we understand you, we understand what the modern NHL actually is. And look, I will say I got a tremendous amount of schadenfreude watching Montgomery get bounced out of the first round by Winnipeg. But the organization itself has felt so ass backwards the last couple of years. And look, and that's also no offense to Montgomery having the best regular season in NHL history. Did they maybe fluke their way into it a little bit and have everybody overperform at the exact same time? Probably, because look at what happened the next 2 years and everybody regressing back to the mean and what happened there.
Hmm.
But if they could hire someone who shows a demonstration of we understand what the modern NHL is about and we're going to embrace it, I would be thrilled. And some of these guys on the list tick
Yeah,
that box for me.
yeah, I'm 100% in agreement. So before we pivot to our next subject, we're going to go ahead and send you over to our sponsors, and we will be right back.
This season, the Two Pad Stack podcast is proudly supported by two fantastic local businesses. First, we're going to give a shout out to Earth Eagle Brewings, where great beer meets great company. With locations in both Portsmouth and Somersworth, New Hampshire, Earth Eagle is something for everybody. Whether you're relaxing in their Portsmouth beer garden or enjoying live music and trivia at the Somersworth pub, you'll be in good hands with their craft beers, epic hot dogs, and much more. And don't forget, if you're into brewing your own beer, their homebrew shop has you covered in Somersworth. And when it comes to tattooing, there's no better place than Vital Ink Tattoo in Barrington, New Hampshire. The artists at Vital Ink are all about turning your ideas into tattoos you'll love forever. The team works hard to make sure every visit is comfortable, and their dedication to making your tattoo experience fun and relaxing is unmatched. Whether you're getting your first piece or adding to your collection, Vital Ink is the place to go. Special thanks to both of these sponsors for supporting the Two Pad Stack podcast this season. Be sure to check them out and show them some love.
All right, so yeah, it's been a interesting time. I mean, I candidly don't usually pay a lot of attention to the men's world championships because usually the Boston Bruins are in the postseason, and it's not really something that's on my radar nor of my concern. But because we are in the wonderful situation where the Boston Bruins have missed the playoffs, gives some of the maybe more prominent members an opportunity to go play for their countries. And usually speaking, the worlds are more important to maybe some of the European players who care a lot about representing their country on the international stage. But it wasn't the Europeans that really took an opportunity to shine in this worlds for the Boston Bruins. It was the Team America roster that went out there and managed to make the final for the first time in like 90 something years in
It
this
was
tournament.
92 years. 1933 was the last time they won the Worlds.
Yeah, so they managed to get it done with Jeremy Swayman, of all people. I didn't know if it was going to be his crease because the tournament started with Joey Decord in the crease, and Swayman got his opportunity. And you know what they say. I mean, you want your goaltenders to battle, and if somebody wins the crease, they want to try to keep the crease. And that's exactly what Swayman did on their way to Team USA capturing their first gold medal in 92 years. What give us Swayman's stats, Jake?
Swayman was 7-0 with a 927 save percentage and a 169 goals against.
Is that good?
That's damn good.
I think that's really good. Hopefully, I really, really am hopeful that this is what he needed to hit the reset button, come back into camp with some swagger and some confidence, and parlay that into a much more Jeremy Swayman-like campaign in 2025, 2026.
I was also super surprised after Winnipeg got eliminated. Team USA wasn't on the horn with Connor Hellebuck immediately to say, "Hey, you want to come over and finish this out for us? Like, you're an awesome goalie, regardless of whatever the hell you just did in the second round of the playoffs."
Oh
But
my God.
yeah, he couldn't stop a beach ball.
Oh, I saw a lot of tweets. It was like Connor Hellebuck in the playoffs is who all Boston Bruins fans said Tuukka Rask in the playoffs was.
Mm.
Like that is just like Jekyll and Hyde 2.0. It's like, well, what is going on over here?
But you know what? You're absolutely right on Swayman. It should be a huge confidence boost. He can have his head held high going into the off season, making TikToks with his girlfriend. That oh, trust me, I see them. They're hysterical. He should be in a great mood for the rest of the summer going forward. And you know what? Reset his head, get himself back in the game, have an actual offseason instead of having contract negotiations, lingering in the back of his mind, and just work as hard as he can, and see what this team looks like July 1st and get excited about it.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating. And also, it wasn't just Swayman on Team USA. We got to give our roses out to the other two members of the team. We had Mason Lohrei on the team, who was playing a little bit more prominently at the beginning of the tournament, and eventually he got phased out and was a scratch towards the later ones. I don't know if it was injury related or not, but Mason Lohrei ended up getting a gold medal as well. And then Andrew Peeke, who was a stalwart, presence on, I think, their third pair throughout the tournament. I think it was third pair.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really cool seeing those guys all get to celebrate, and you got a lot of the images with Peeker and Sway in the postseason on Instagram, which was pretty cool to see. And then outside of those three gentlemen, they didn't win gold, but some outstanding performances by some key Boston Bruins players. Jake, who kind of stood out to you, and you got some stats for us?
Yeah. Elias Lindholm had 8 goals, 6 assists, 14 points, and a +8 in 10 games, which was fantastic. That actually led Team Sweden and was second in the world in general, only behind Mr. David Pastrnak with 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points, and a +7. So, I'm not surprised to see David Pastrnak thriving. It makes me feel so much better watching Elias Lindholm do things because it tells me he's talented. It's there. Surround him with the right people, put him in the right system. He will do good things. Also, don't have an injured back and play through for the whole season, please. Go rest and recover for the rest of the offseason. But the talent is there. Pastrnak, we know, is talented. Elias Lindholm is showing us what he actually is. Great for the both of them. Again, just like Swayman needed a bit of a reset, I know Pastrnak carried the team on his back for 90% of this year. But for the both of them to mentally reset after a tough year for the team, say, hey, we're still talented, we're still good. I know we can come together and do some great things. Go into the offseason with their heads held high and, have that mental reset. Next season's coming. I can produce. We can be better.
Yeah, and it's also really cool for me to see David Pastrnak in a situation with a Czech team where he's basically their leader. I know he didn't have the C, but it just made me feel a lot better about what the potential was of him donning the C in Boston after seeing the way that he really takes accountability for his team's effort in Czech. I know he was voted like the top sportsman of the year like 3 years in a row for the Czech Republic, and that's across all sports, including footballers. And football, soccer is very important to the Czechs over there, and they still are just giving him the nod in that awesome honor over there. So love seeing Pasta's work. He was the top scorer in the tournament. Lindholm was second highest scorer in the tournament. So, prominent Bruins doing prominent things in an international tournament and a good warm up for the Olympics next year. I believe the Spengler Cup is coming up soon too, which is another opportunity for international hockey.
I would believe so. But
Yeah.
I don't really care too much about Spengler because
Yes, I'd rather them be in the goddamn playoffs. Oh,
Spengler. So they moved it to Christmas. That's right.
oh, okay, cool. I'm used to that being. I thought that was off season. Wasn't it usually the off season
Yeah,
as well?
usually December 26th to 31st of this year
Interesting.
in Switzerland.
Cool. Um, there was an interesting signing that the Bruins made, and I'm not talking about the Patrick Brown signing. We're not going to talk about that. But the interesting signing is a 23-year-old. Speaking of Czechs, by the way, 23-year-old Simon Zajiček, goaltender from the Czech Extraliga. What are your thoughts on the Zajiček signing, Jake?
It tells me that one of either Busty or DiPietro is not coming back or in hot water or is a trade piece, because we've said for how many years the Bruins have goaltending prospects up the wazoo to throw around, when it was, Busty and Kaiser. Now it's Busty and DiPietro. They've had guys in Providence for so many years who we thought, okay, these guys can be part of a trade package somehow. So it's telling me maybe one of these guys is off somewhere else. So I don't know who. Do you have any thoughts? You're the goaltending expert here. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts as to who you would prefer to not come back.
My preference is that I think it's probably time for Brandon Busty to go see if there's an opportunity in another org. I think that maybe that bridge has been burned a little bit. I think that there was this is all speculation. I have no concrete evidence behind this, but I believe that he's had that conversation multiple times of saying, okay, here's your opportunity, kid. You're going to have an opportunity. And each time where he's been given that opportunity to go and win a job, he's found himself on the outside looking in. So it kind of reminds me back when Zane McIntyre became a Boston Bruin, came from the NCAA, had a bunch of opportunities. Unfortunately, just never really stuck. And then he ended up going to another org and tried to make it there, and it didn't work out there either. So obviously, it's my personal hope that it does work out for Brandon Busty and he gets an NHL job. I don't think it's going to be here, and I think sometimes it's just good for a change of scenery, right? Get out of the org. DiPietro came as part of the Studnicka trade, so he's been in the org a little less long than what Busty has been. And I honestly think that I've seen more development out of DiPietro. DiPietro was, I believe, awarded the top goaltender award or something like that.
Yeah, the Baz Bastian Memorial Award as AHL Goalie of the Year. He won out that starting job. He had a 26-8-5 record in 40 appearances. That's your finishing second in the league in wins and save percentage and third in goals against.
Just excellent work by him last year. And I really thought that, it goes back to last year's training camp where I went there and in person and I saw all the goaltenders minus Swayman because he wasn't signed yet. But I saw all of these guys that were competing for this job. And I honestly thought DiPietro looked like the best goaltender in camp. And I thought he looked like the most athletic goaltender in camp. And the stats back it up this year from his performance in Providence. And I think it's important that as an organization, you send out the message that says, hey, we want to reward our players who are exceeding and excelling. I want to make sure that we can give you another contract offer, probably another two-way, because we still have Korpisalo. But Korpisalo goes down, tears an ACL or something, Swayman goes down, God forbid. I would rather have DiPietro in the system and ready to come up than a Zajiček who has yet to be proven anything, than a Busty who's come up and really kind of struggled at the NHL level minus preseason games. So
he makes some flashy saves, but it's about consistency. And you hope for DiPietro it's not a flash in the pan, but if his development continues the way it's going, he's got a good shot at backing up a good chunk of the games this season if something happens.
Yeah, but I think it'll be really cool to see what Zajiček does. I mean, I feel like he's a goalie that could have the potential of coming in playing, number one minutes in Providence and winning that goaltender of the year award again. I mean, he's young, a 927 save percentage over there in the Czech Extraliga, a 1.69 goals against average. One of the other interesting stats that I saw was that he had some of the lowest rebound numbers in the entire league. So he's very good at controlling the rebounds. And that's not a junior league that he's playing, and he's playing against men. So I think that there's definitely, a foundational, there's stuff that the Boston Bruins goaltending staff. I mean, we've already talked about goalie Bob a million times on this podcast. I think that there's stuff there's good Play-Doh to work with here. You can sculpt something good out of this guy. So and then it just goes back to the relationship that we already have with the other Czech players on the team. I mean, the first thing I saw when the Bruins announced that signing was Jacob Lauko like celebrating on Twitter and retweeting it that they signed another Czech guy. So you got Lauko, you've got Zacha, you got obviously David Pastrnak. Like it's going to be basically the Boston Czechs if we keep going down this path.
Hey, we forgot to give Grapes his due. He had a golden assist at Worlds too.
Great point. Yeah, absolutely. Playing some nice, depth. That was a snipe, by the way, in that turn. I don't know if you saw the highlight of the goal. Like it was just a beautiful, beautiful snipe. Nice.
He's got hands when they're not wrapped up in Band-Aids.
Yeah, I mean, he's been watching too many of those UFC videos. He loves his UFC. He keeps trying to fight people. It's so funny. So that was an interesting signing. It was something a little out of the normal than maybe what I'm used to from the Boston Bruins. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is that it was just a 1-year entry-level contract. So it wasn't a 2. I think that had to do just because of his age, being a 23-year-old,
maybe
and eligibility. But
yeah,
it'll be interesting. The Marchand pick in the Marchand deal, which before we talk about that pick, we'll just kind of give you a brief reminder where the NHL playoffs are at in case you, as a Boston Bruins fan, you completely disassociate as soon as your team's done. It's the Eastern Conference and Western Conference final right now, guys. And the evil empire Florida Panthers is up 3-0 in their series against the Carolina Hurricanes. And by the time you listen to this, Game 4 is going to be done, and the Hurricanes may be dead. They may be. It's 0-0 as we're talking right now and recording. But Brad Marchand's on the precipice of going back to the Stanley Cup final. And as a result of that, I mean, there are some, really kind of superfluous, minor details that could impact this. But it's like 99% that as a result of his, performance, which has been very good, by the way, with the Florida Panthers, that the Bruins have locked in another first-round pick in 2027 or 2028. So that's
so it is officially locked in. It's just a matter of which year. He had to play in 50% of the Panthers playoff games, and the Panthers had to advance more than 2 rounds. Clearly, they're in the 3rd round, so that checked out. And he has now played in how many games has Marchand played in the playoffs? I think he's played
was 7, and then the first round series against Tampa was 5.
I'm just not sure whether he's sat out any of the games or like.
No, he played every single one of them in the postseason.
Okay, well there you go. Yeah, I got it right here. You're right. So 15 games played in the playoffs so far. If they sweep, that's great. If they don't sweep and it goes 7, there's a maximum of 4 plus another 7, or 3 plus another 7, so that's 10. He's already played in more than half of the Panthers' hypothetical games in the playoffs, which means that the Bruins officially have a first-round pick. There's more conditions. More conditions. I'm working on more conditions, which it's infuriating to not know. But if the 2027 first-round pick that the Florida Panthers have ends up in the top 10, or if the Panthers do not end up having their 2026 first-round pick, that's one of the conditions of the Seth Jones trade that they received him from Chicago. So if they have to send that out to Chicago and they don't have that, then the 27 pick becomes a 28 pick.
It would definitely be better if it's 27 pick as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, regardless, it makes me feel at least a little better. I think we said so much throughout the trade deadline. It has to be a first-round pick. It has to be a first-round pick. It just took a really long time to get there, but he ended up getting a first-round pick for Marchand.
Yeah, and candidly, I prefer it to be a future draft than in this one, because this one's pretty well regarded as a lower ceiling draft.
Yeah.
So maybe 2027 will be exponentially better than what the 2025 draft is, and it'll all make us look very silly. Who knows if Don Sweeney will even be the guy
next year?
Yeah, who knows if Don Sweeney will even be the guy making a pick in 2027 at this point. So, yeah. There was a report today. Any other thoughts on the Marchand pick update or the playoffs in general, Jake?
Whoever signs him next year needs to be ready to give him an unlimited supply of cookie dough blizzards.
That was so funny. That interview, he looks right at the camera. He's like, "You hear me, Dairy Queen? Unlimited blizzards for life." Such a
New
funny dude.
sponsorship coming right away.
So funny, so funny. I do think that he's not coming back. By the way, I think that's
no.
pretty. That ship has sailed. So
A friend of mine who's a Capitals fan has said that they would like him to sign in Washington. I was like, oh, if you want to pull a Chara, you know what? As long as
yeah,
he's not
right.
in the
You take
division.
all our old, washed-up players that are on the
Yeah.
twilight of their careers, so that wouldn't surprise me.
God, no. Imagine Brad Marchand and Tom Wilson on the same team.
No, I don't want to. And then honestly,
I mean, we've already got him and Matt Tkachuk together, so I guess it's not that far of a
Sam
stretch, but
Bennett,
it's still scary.
yeah, I mean Bennett on the roster too. Like,
Ooh.
ugh. They even have the Finns playing dirty.
Yep.
I don't know what is in the water down there in southern Florida, but like you got Eetu Luistarinen that's throwing dirty hits, and it's like it's just top to bottom. I mean, they play like junkyard dog mentality, and it's obviously working. So I just don't
It
know
gives
what
me
the
a
hell
lot
is
of
going on.
pause. Yeah, I mean, it gives me a lot of pause. If the Hurricanes don't make it out of this round, which it's looking more and more likely that they won't, you know, it is not it's not impossible. They could pull a reverse sweep, but it seems like a very tall task. It gives me a lot of pause about Rod Brind'Amour as the head coach.
That's what I was about to
We
ask
talked
you.
a lot about this in our last episode. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. At what point is his ass on the hot seat? Like, you've only been able to get us so far, so many times.
So what happens if they do decide to can Rod Brind'Amour? If you're
I
Don
don't
Sweeney and you
I don't
haven't
think it happens
decided,
this season. I think they're already so far past the window of hiring a good head coach. I think they're going to lose out on this window regardless. And so it would probably happen next season, but if they somehow did, I would be shocked, but I wouldn't be surprised. Which is funny because the last guy to have scored, I think it was the last guy to score a game winner for Carolina in an Eastern Conference Final where they made it past that round was himself. And he is Carolina. Rod the Bod is the Carolina Hurricanes. And so, you know, we saw really hard when they swung for the fences for Mikko Rantanen, and Mikko's like, fuck that. I don't want to play here. Maybe it says something about the organization in general. Maybe it's the NFL. I mean, we are who they thought we were. Maybe they're the paper tigers we think they kind of have been.
Yeah. If he gets canned, if he does, and Don Sweeney hasn't made a decision yet, would you want Don to make that call?
Oh my God, I think people would die seeing Rod as
Can you imagine?
coach. Oh my God. He'd bring the fire. I think people watching Rod scream from behind the bench, I think would get the crowd fired up.
Can you imagine, like, though, another first round series, like Bruins make it again, and they get the inevitable Leafs matchup in the first round. Can you imagine the work that those two guys between Berube and Brind'Amour would be doing to work those refs in between games?
Oh,
like those two guys are the biggest crybabies to try to finesse referees between games that I've ever seen in the league, and I think it would be fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
Some personal news for me. I am officially a Boston Bruins season ticket holder, so I am very, very excited about that. I just I got my email tonight telling me that I need to keep an eye out for my invitation to the Bruins draft party. So very excited about that. So yeah, it was a childhood dream of mine, officially accomplished. Ever since I was a young child, I said to myself, you know, one day, future self, I really want to give Jeremy Jacobs thousands of dollars. That's really what I want to do. That's my childhood dream. So looking forward to it, moving up from my 10-game plan into some nicer seats, and sharing half the seats with my buddy from the SHL, my nerdy sim hockey league community that I'm involved with. So that was really a fun message to get. had to shuffle some things around financially to make it work. But
Are you up
you
on the
know,
balcony with us diehards, or did you move down to the white collar stuffies den
oh, I
below?
was looking down in the loge, man, but it's like I'd have to like sacrifice my oldest child in order to get down there. So I'm still up there. I'm in like row 9 or so in 309. So we're we actually have a spot where it's like right where the stairs start going up, and it like then cuts into the central aisle.
Oh,
So we
neat.
have like no one directly in front of us, which is nice.
That's
Um,
unreal.
yeah, that's pretty nice. So I'm looking forward to this season, and hopefully with our brand new jerseys, the Bruins go out and sign some nice new players, and they can string together with their brand new coach a
I mean,
really
you were
really
telling me
good
about the
season.
crazy deals at the pro shop. It sounds like we're
Yeah,
getting some new merch pretty soon.
yeah. I mean, it was on the heels of that tariff based conversation from CBC, where they went into the production facility in Quebec where NHL jerseys are actually made, the on ice jerseys are made, and they inadvertently leaked the new jersey, and it looks like that 90s 80s style era jersey is going to be officially coming to the team. And I would expect that we probably we may even see a reveal by the time we record next, because the draft's coming up in a month, and they're gonna want to have these things out there and available for people to order. You know how Jacobs are; they're gonna want to sell these things like hotcakes. So Jake was mentioning it. Take a look at the Boston Bro Shop website. I just got a spanking deal for my kids. I bought 2 jerseys, and not even like Carlo or Coyle jerseys, which are going for like $30 apparently right now. But a centennial jersey for Charlie McAvoy, a centennial jersey for David Pastrnak. So 2 players that are still the foundational players on this team. I got 2 youth jerseys for $60. So take a
Wow.
peek. You're not going to see a deal like this on jerseys. And no, this is not a sponsored podcast by the Boston Bruins, as much as I'd love it to be.
We're just looking out
But
for
yeah,
your wallets here.
for real, save yourself some cash. But yeah, any closing thoughts for today's episode, Jake? Before we wrap up.
I think it's funny how much we said there weren't a ton of news to talk about, that we actually had a lot to talk about, you know? I think even by the time next time we record, whether it's 2 weeks from now, if we can stick to our bi-weekly, if it's a month from now, there's going to be a lot going on. I think the Bruins are going to certainly look different a month from now, maybe even 2 weeks from now. And, you know, I'm still nervous. I said it at the end of season, moratorium. I was nervous about how this offseason was going to go. I still am. But seeing the names that are coming out for head coach, kind of maybe the quiet rumblings, the toes are dipping in the water in a way that I'm not too mad about. But hopefully they keep that up, and it's not just like a fun little way to get us hanging, and then we all of a sudden hire David Quinn and sign nobody or throw money at the next Matt Bolesky.
Yeah, that's not what we want. Well said. Before we wrap up, it is officially official. Shout out to the Minnesota Frost, the back-to-back Walter Cup champions in the PWHL. So that came through while we were recording. Congratulations to them. I've been paying more and more attention to the women's hockey since my daughter's gotten into the competitive hockey scene. So that is really, really cool to see. So, but yeah, on behalf of Jake and myself, we appreciate your listenership. Apologies for the delay between episodes, but we do very well plan on keep on going and being active in producing Bruins content. So stay tuned. Follow us on socials. We do have that really cool episode coming from development camp in about a month's time. So that's going to be coming out soon. So hopefully we'll be back to break down coaching news, maybe some draft hints, that kind of stuff. But until next time, we will see you later on. Peace.